prisons are overcrowded. Anti-crime programs don't seem to be all that successful, and some communities are trying to think of alternatives. John Stossel is about to show you one such alternative, a face-to-face meeting between criminal and victim, where the results could be positive for all of us.
How do you plead to the offense of driving under the influence of alcohol with no prior convictions?
Guilty.
John Muth is convicted of drunk driving.
Yes, Your Honor. And see the
judge orders him not to jail, but to a hospital.
We are en route with a 25-year-old male patient. Patient was a passenger in an auto in the tree.
Sacramento, California's Emergency Trauma Center typically treats about 15 victims of drunk driving accidents every weekend night.
Why don't you wait?
Tonight, John must watch.
You see how they have that tape across him and he's taped to a board?
A nurse gives him details.
He was a passenger and the person that was driving was intoxicated and his head may hit the windshield.
The judge calls this reality therapy. It shows the drunk driver the damage he might do.
You doing okay?
Not anything I'll ever forget today. I know I will not drink and drive again.
Another judge's version of reality therapy was to sentence this landlord who disobeyed court orders to fix up his rat-infested, run-down buildings to live there himself. He's expected to move in this summer. Those are two examples of what is clearly a trend. Judges are finding new ways to punish people. Often it's punishment that fits the crime. And some experts say that compared to jail, these alternative punishments are cheaper and better. More on that in a moment, but first, two more examples involving people you may know.
As you can see, this is my first MC job. This could be my last.
Actor Tony Danza punched someone out in a bar. He was sentenced not to jail, but as this home video shows, to work in a nursing home. Tony Peters, defensive back for the Washington Redskins, was arrested for dealing cocaine. His sentence, community service, counseling kids to stay away from drugs. Now, how do people get deals like that? I'd sure prefer an alternative to jail. Well, there's no national policy on this. Some states promote it, but basically it's up to the local judge. And some criminals get alternatives by hiring people like Herb Holter. His nonprofit company designs alternatives for people and suggests them to the judge. He designed Tony Peters' sentence. It sounds like a special deal for the rich and the famous. Your rich clients get off, but poor people serve time.
Those are the cases that we hear about. In fact, the average community service sentence is imposed on the person who's broken into your house or the person who's stolen our cars. The average crook.
For people like Walter Garrison, he's the one in the brown jacket. Here in Indiana, the alternative program goes a step further, and this part is amazing. They actually have the criminal meet the victim. Walter burglarized this house in Valparaiso, Indiana. He's already served 7 months in jail.
Hi, Barb. This is Walt Garrison.
Today, escorted by a mediator, he for the first time will face Barbara Weeks, the woman he robbed.
Were you in this neighborhood? How'd you pick this house?
The lights were off, and no car was in the driveway.
Now, why does Barbara agree to this?
Well,
she'll have a voice in Walter's sentence. Her recommendation is given to the judge.
I was so surprised that you were so neat about it. I don't understand. Where all did you look?
Around the living room, went up in the bedrooms, looked through the drawers.
What would have happened if I had come in while you were in the house?
That's a question that I can't really answer, because if you would have came in the house, we probably would have assaulted you by, hitting you to make sure you couldn't see us, and we'd leave right away, just take off.
Was that something that you considered, that went through your minds?
It didn't go through our minds at the time,
Some experts claim these meetings, by making the victim human, less anonymous, make criminals less likely to do it again. Walter blames the crime on his drinking problem.
Basically, I'm a good-hearted person. I couldn't hurt anybody or anything, but I did. And it's weird,
And at the end of the meeting, Barbara decides maybe Walter doesn't need to stay in jail.
There's two sides to every story. He didn't realize people behind the window, and I don't really realize reasons behind the break-in. And that's why I think it's good to meet him. So you get the background story.
Not all victims are that accommodating.
I was just so scared. I was so scared to do anything.
Laura Whitson was robbed at gunpoint. The robber, Gerald Moore, got 7 years.
He's capable of pointing a gun in a person's face and maybe next time pulling the trigger. I think the only way for me to feel good is for him to be locked up.
Despite her feelings, Oklahoma's Corrections Department persuades her to meet with Gerald. She says being here makes her very uncomfortable. Gerald tells her his cocaine habit made him do it.
All I wanted was, just a purse. I wouldn't really, call myself robbing the lady and stuff. All I really wanted to do was just, grab some quick money where I could go out and get my supply back up to date.
Laura doesn't buy this.
I'm a human being. I have a heart. But I can't afford...
She tells the state's mediator she does not think that Gerald deserves an alternative.
Until he gets the kind of treatment he needs that will keep him from committing a crime such as this ever again.
When victims agree to the alternatives, the results sometimes are astonishing. Doug Pritchard helped burglarize Connie and Charlie Vandenberg's house.
I was in bed sleeping right here, and they came in and turned the light on, saw me sleeping, and didn't seem to bother them.
And we went back to the car, and we were headed home, and that's when we got stopped.
After he was arrested, the Vandenbergs were asked, "Will you meet the burglar?"
And I was real apprehensive, but I thought, okay, I'll try. I'll get involved. And then they said that they wanted the interviews at the house. I said, fine, invite them in, let them see what they forgot. They can come back and get what's left over.
Still, she agreed to the meeting. And afterwards, well, even the Vandenbergs have trouble believing this. But Doug is paying them back by sawing wood and painting their house, the very house he robbed. Being paid back is one reason victims sometimes support alternatives. If the criminal's in jail, he can't pay you back.
If you've lost your stereo, we're going to say to you, it may take us a year, but we're going to pay you $100 a month.
Society saves money too.
Monitoring in the community right now costs about $10 per day, which is about $3,600 per year. Prisons, on the other hand, are costing $20,000 on an average per year per inmate.
And there's another problem with prison.
3 out of every 4 people who go to prison will be back in prison. If any private industry ran 3 out of 4 failure, they'd be out of business in 20 days. When they go into prison, they learn how to duplicate car keys, they learn how to hotwire cars, they learn how to break into mailboxes. There's a lot of tricks of the criminal trade that people learn in prison. And then they come out worse than when they went in with no skills and nothing going on.
James Thornton is getting out today. He served 3.5 years for robbing someone's apartment. Now, carrying all his possessions in a paper bag, he faces re-entry. He isn't prepared for it.
Why were you robbing these people?
For the money.
You have money now?
Well, I don't have a job, but I'm looking to get one.
Now that you're an ex-con, it's going to be tougher.
Listen, I ain't afraid to ask. I would ask you.
Serving time means no job connections. Often an ex-con doesn't even know how to apply, how to fill out the forms, how to dress for the interviews.
You'd have people coming to interviews in the same clothes that they went to bed in the night before. Okay? We taught them hygiene. We taught them how to fill out a job application. We taught them how to sign their names. We take them to get their Social Security cards. We're not promising them careers at IBM. We'll say, we'll get you a job at McDonald's.
In Raleigh, North Carolina, Andre Turner has been working as a bricklayer. He had to get a job as part of his alternative. He was arrested for beating this boy with a stick, beating him hard enough to partially blind him. Andre's sentence included 20 weekends in jail plus community service, working free in this school for the blind. Working here taught him a lesson, he says.
I realized that I was once again blessed to be able to do for myself and go places and see how green the grass is and the sky blue.
Now, some people might say, this is crazy. This man viciously beat someone. He belongs in jail, not out on some alternative program. One person clearly unhappy about Andre's being free is the victim's father, a plainclothes detective.
This was a violent crime. He left my son in the ditch in front of that house, and he didn't know if he was alive or dead. I feel like that that type of crime needs to be punished by an active prison sentence.
Other people agree. They say an alternative is not sufficient punishment. And in fact, alternatives are not intended for violent criminals. But the beating was Andre's first offense. He stayed out of trouble since then, and his community service was very good.
The kids here really seemed to like him. At the times when it wasn't his night to be here, well, where's Andre? I was going to play pool with him.
Even Detective Evans has conflicting feelings.
You can't keep somebody in jail forever for committing a crime. They have to have a second chance.
So judges keep devising new programs. In Newport, Oregon, they're punishing criminals by publicly humiliating them. They serve less time in jail if they, at their own expense, run ads announcing their crime and apologizing. Many of these programs seem to work. A Rand Corporation study in California found that those who'd been sentenced to alternatives were less likely to commit new crimes than people who had just gone to prison. And what about the people we've met?
Well, it's now more than a year later. Walter has completed alcohol therapy and paid Barbara back. Doug has a full-time job, and Andre is still building houses and says he's pulled his life together. All have stayed out of trouble.
We've done it. We've prepared cases for 5,000 offenders over the last 8 years. White-collar cases, average street crime cases. 75% of our people do not get into trouble again.
John, I can see the value of this idea, but they do have to screen carefully, don't they? There are some people who shouldn't be at liberty.
Very carefully. We want to be protected from the people who are dangerous. It's pretty much up to the judge, and the programs we checked out have a good record. And what really impresses me is the money, that they can get the guy a job, have a probation officer go to his house to check on him, put him through alcohol treatment, and that costs $4,000 versus $20,000 to put him in jail. I mean, that's a lot of money that the taxpayer can save, $16,000 per prisoner.
Sure is.
Seems like a great idea.
It does. Thank you, John.